The contestable market theory basically is a contestable market theory is a new, relatively newer theory, which actually looks at what happens in the real world. So when you look at, in the real world scenario, sometimes it happens is just that you might be, you might be, you might be in a market structure where you are a monopoly. Okay, you might be a monopoly. You might be the only player in the market, but you may not act like that monopoly. For example, school canteen. If there's a school canteen that is being given to a caterer, right? Now, although that school canteen caterer is a monopoly in the in the sense of being the only player in the market, but will the school canteen act like a monopoly or not? And the answer is probably not, because this theory argues that what is crucially determining price and output is not basically, like you are in perfect competition or monopoly. It's all about whether there is a real threat of competition. In other words, how strong are the barriers to entry? You know, if the barriers to entry basically are such that any firm can enter, any firm can compete with you. For example, if school canteen wala jo hai, if he doesn't do well and he charges a very high price or give you low quality food, is not efficient and whatever, the school can totally replace him with another caterer. So in a way, school canteen is a monopoly, but it cannot stay as a monopoly if it doesn't do too well. And that idea of a monopoly basically is such that you are not, you are basically in a contestable market, in a market where you could easily be contested and somebody can take your market away. Now the school canteen guys, if I ask you guys, if the school canteen needs to stay in business so that school management doesn't kick him out, what does he need to do? What are the things that he needs to do? In terms of prices, he needs to, anyone? In terms of prices, yeah, reasonable price or low price. Yeah, keep the prices low. And in terms of efficiency, he needs to be high. And keep reasonable price, good relationship with the school, give them good margin, right? No, that's not true. So keep the prices low. And secondly, he needs to make sure the quality is good, right? The food quality is good and so on and so forth. Hopefully, the relationship with the school will also be good if he's doing all those things. So this is exactly what the theory says, is that when you are looking at, the fact that your competition can become uh, your potential competition, let me write this, your potential competition can become actual competition, may force you to act like very competitive, right? Does that make sense? Another good example of this, guys, I want to talk about this. Another good example of this is that, like airlines, when the airlines go, for example, there's a flight from, let's say, Karachi to, let's assume, Multan. Okay. And let's say abhi sirf PIA wahan pe operate karti hai. And let's say PIA charges a price like 40,000 rupees, 40K. And let's say AirSeal to nahi aayi abhi tak, lekin let's say Serene is thinking of entering this market. Now, how can PIA make sure that Serene doesn't enter the market? And the answer is, what PIA will do is this: if they're making 40K, which is, let's say, very profitable, they may slash their prices and they may keep it at, let's say, 30K. This way, what you're doing is this, that you don't make your potential competition become actual competition. You try to charge kind of like a normal profit. Okay, you make normal profit, and as a result of that, you discourage new firms from entering the market. Make sense? Can Serene enter the market? And the answer is yes. Serene just needs to sort of make sure that they have the plane and they start to sort of operate here. But will they do that? And the answer is probably not. They will probably not do that if the prices are very low and it's not worthwhile. They may go to more profitable routes. Keeping profit low, therefore, becomes a way to distract new firms to enter, and that's what the theory of contestable market is. Okay, now I want to talk about something called a perfectly contestable market. So, in a perfectly contestable market, the key assumption that we make, contestable market. Before I move on, is there any question, guys? Any questions? Okay. In a perfectly contestable market, guys, we assume there are basically no barriers to entry. No barriers to entry or exit. And in a perfectly contestable market, we say this that if this is your firm, and let's say this is your demand curve, okay, and let's say this is your MR, right? And let's say this is your average cost, and let's say assume average cost is falling, okay, and I'm assuming average cost is falling just because I wanted to assume that there is a potential for economies of scale, okay. So, and this is your, let's say, marginal cost, okay, so longer marginal cost. So आपके पास, if you're in a perfectly contestable market, you can make supernormal profit by being here. By producing Q1, you can make a lot of profit and you can charge price P1. Okay, and that's something like this is your profit, which I'm not labeling right now. But because you know there are no barriers to entry and exit, so you will be like, you know what should we do in order to make sure we don't encourage new firms to enter? And the answer to this one would be try to keep your profits as low as possible, which means you might charge a price here. Rather than being at point A, you might be at point B, and you may charge a price like P2. You may want to keep your prices low so that no new firm enter. Also, you may want to produce as much as possible to exploit any potential economies of scale. So contestable market theory says this कि अगर आपको डर है कि नई फर्म आएगी और वो आपकी मार्केट ले जाएगी, what you try to do is basically number one, keep prices as low as possible, right? So basically make normal profit. And number two, be as efficient as possible to exploit economies of scale. Do you guys get that? Does that make sense? So that's what the theory says. So the theory actually argues is that the threat of a potential competition becoming actual competition may make you behave in this manner. तो आप प्रॉफिट पर नॉर्मल प्रॉफिट कमा सकते भी होगे तो अभी आप बोलोगे यार नहीं कमाओ बिकॉज यहाँ पे यू माइट you might end up losing out, losing your market to other players. Make sense, guys? Any question? Are we good? Does that make sense, guys? Super quiet people. Do you agree with me? Okay, awesome. Now I want to talk about, guys, I want to talk about the next thing. And the next thing I want to talk about is to do with the idea to do with basically your natural monopoly. Like K electric की बात करते हैं, natural monopoly जो K electric होती है, normally in the case of natural monopoly like K electric, the government actually can replace, you know, your K electric at any point in time. If if for example K electric tries to charge a higher price, right, or try to be inefficient and do not exploit economies of scale, so you can let another company can replace K electric. The courts can order that to happen. So in a way, when you're a natural monopoly, it is in your interest to basically be, you are kind of like in a contestable market situation. So we argue that they are kind of in a contestable market situation, especially when the government is controlling the entry and exit of new firms. just like the school canteen situation, where you might actually be required to charge uh, a lower price. Make sense, guys? Are we good? Any questions? So in a contestable market situation, we normally argue that uh, they are in a contestable situation because new firms can end up competing. A new firm can end up being replacing the firm in this kind of a scenario, because the government may say, you know what, you're not doing a good job, and we give you this sole right of sort of production in this market, and they may ask them to they may ask such a sort of um, natural monopoly to be replaced. Yep, are we good to move on? Okay, the last part of my discussion, guys, is to do with uh, your alternative aims to profit maximization. We did this with Sir Raza. Some of the kids were saying कि अगर इसको मैं एक बार review कर दूं, but are you guys comfortable with alternative aims to profit maximization, which you guys did with Sir Raza? Okay, let me do it again, just in case for people who might have some confusion. So let's do this one more time. So guys, we this is a very popular exam question. Okay, so this comes a lot in essay questions. So I want you guys, everyone, to prepare this really well, and that's why I think it's important to revise it one more time. So sometimes what happens is this, that firms which were supposed to do MC equals to MR may not do that all the time. And they may not do that all the time for many reasons. And that's exactly what we need to look at. The first reason we look at is sometimes firm may not have perfect knowledge. So they may have what we call imperfect information about demand and cost. So, like if you ask me, for example, predict the demand for cedar for next year, it's not going to be really easy for us to do so. We may do a good job given what we have this year, but we may not be completely able to predict a demand curve and therefore MR curve. Okay, it could be a good guesswork, but may not be perfectly reliable MR and therefore perfectly reliable MC. So what we say is firms, they are trying to basically uh, do prediction, and they have prediction models and all that, but it's not never easy to predict the right MR and right MC. And especially if you are in a market where there's more uncertainty, when you don't have enough information, you may end up not relying on MC and MR, or you may do guesswork to to predict these MR and MC so that you can find out the quantity and price. So in short, in reality, while we want to maximize profit, we may sometimes not be able to do so because of lack of information. So first point is that profit maximization, MC equals to MR, may not be possible because of lack of information for businesses. Make sense, guys? Are we happy with the first point? While you want to maximize profit, you may not be able to do so. Gaurav, everyone else, does that make sense? Okay. The second point we make, guys, is to do with your sometimes when you're making supernormal profits in the short run. So supernormal profits, let's say number two. Let me change the color also. Supernormal profits in the short run may not be in the long run interest of the company. So if I look at this, what could be the two possible reasons why sometimes supernormal profit cannot be good for you in the long run? Anyone, any prediction, anything you believe can happen for you if you make too much profit in the short run? Very good job, Isha. There could be entry of new firms. Good job. We just learned about that. And number two, There's also one more thing which can happen if you make too much money. Something which is happening to private schools these days. What is happening to private schools these days when you make too much money? Not really taxes. No, not taxes. That's not what is happening. Government interference. Good job, Isha. So government regulator may come after you. They will like, अबे भाई इतने पैसे कमा रहे हो चलो 20% कम करो. You know what I mean? So that could also happen. So knowing that you can basically make the government regulator come after you, or maybe new firms to enter, you sometimes try to keep your profit not maximum, not huge, but sometimes slightly lower to not be under the radar of new firms or regulator. Makes sense, guys? So that's your number 2 point. Are we good? We happy with number two? Yeah. So that's why sometimes you may want to make supernormal profit, but you may not want to do that because of these two. Number three, you could also have alternative aims. Sometimes we have alternative aims, which is why we don't want to maximize. हारिस पहला पॉइंट सिंपली ये है कि आपके पास नॉलेज ही नहीं है, इंफॉर्मेशन इतनी नहीं होती रियल वर्ल्ड में, इस वजह से आप जो है एम सी को एम आर नहीं कर पाते. एम आर जो है बाय द वे फ्यूचर एम आर होता है और एम सी भी फ्यूचर एम सी होती है. तो कभी कभार लैक ऑफ नॉलेज की वजह से आप एम सी को एम आर नहीं करते और आप गैस वर्क करते हो और आप गैस करके आप अपनी निकालने की कोशिश करते हो profitability को, but you can't really cleanly do MC equals to MR. That's the first point. Make sense? Alternative aims क्या होते हैं कभी कभार? Sometimes होता है, पहला aim होता है limit pricing, and I want to show you limit pricing. Okay, so one alternative aim could be limit pricing, something like this one. Look at this, guys. Let's say this is the average cost of the entrant. नई फर्म का एवरेज कॉस्ट ये है और ये आपका एवरेज कॉस्ट है. ओके, so PL is the price where the entrant makes a normal profit. And let's say P2 is the your price. Okay, so PL is the entrant's price, P2 is your price. I mean, not P2, P2 is the price where you make normal profit. Now, if you want this new entrant, and by the way, why is your average cost low? Because you are established player in the market, and this guy is a new player. So if you really want this firm to not enter the market, okay, what price should you charge? If you want to limit his entry in the market, guys, what price should you charge? Below PL but above P2? Isha, does that make sense? Below PL but above, isn't that true? P2, because above P2 आपको super normal profit मिलेगा और below PL उसको losses मिलेंगे. So sometimes we may not want to maximize profit, but we want to limit competition by charging a limit price, which is basically any price where your new firms make a loss and yet you are still making a profit. So any price between PL and P2 can basically limit new firms to enter. Okay, and that's what we call limit pricing. Got it? Does that make sense, everyone? Haris, do we get this? Are we good? आगे बढ़े बच्चों? Okay. The next point I want to talk about is basically to do with after limit pricing. I want to talk about basically what are the other aims, and I want to talk about this diagram. Now look at this diagram. This diagram has हमने पहले भी किया हुआ, so that's why I want to do it quickly. This is a very good diagram. It talks about a lot of aims happening in the for a producer. Guys, अगर आप if you charge P1, what price is P1? Anyone? What price is P1? What price is P1? Profit maximizing. Very good job, because P1 पे क्या हो रहा है? MC equals to MR. Isn't that true? At P1, MC is equal to MR, and that's why we call it profit maximizing. This is the price you would love to charge, right? But what if you're not charging P1, but you're charging P2? P2. At P2, by the way, MR is equal to 0. So what price is P2? Good job. Sales revenue maximization. Isn't that sales revenue maximization? Abrar, allocative efficiency is happening at C, at P3. P3 price is equal to MC. What is that called? That's called allocative. That's called allocative efficiency. You got it? Are you happy with C? Or marginal cost pricing? Very good. It's also called marginal cost pricing, right? Now, what is price D? What is D? P4, where price is equal to ATC. Sales volume, good job. Sales volume maximization. This is why do we call it sales volume maximization? Because guys, इस price पे क्या हो रहा है? इस price पे you sell the maximum possible quantity and you do not make a loss. इसके बाद से आपका loss शुरू. Because this is normal profit exactly, Habib. This is normal profit. Beyond this, you will start to have loss. Do you all agree with me? Does that make sense? Now, there is another price that we look at. So basically, you could be maximizing your revenue, and that's why you may charge P2. You may be maximizing your sales volume, and you may charge P4. Or you might be trying to be allocatively efficient. Now, we also said this, and I think Isha mentioned this as well. We also call this as satisficing profit. Why do we call it satisficing profit? Anyone? Why do we call it satisficing profit? P3. Why is P3 satisficing profit? Anyone? Do you guys remember what satisficing profit is? You are very good. You are satisfying. No, Tuba. You are satisfying. You satisfying many stakeholders. Okay. For example, look at this, guys. Let me zoom this diagram. P equals to MC. Will it make the government happy? Will it make the government happy? Anyone? Yes. Why? Because government will be happy because you are allocatively efficient. So I will put a tick here. Will it make the consumer happy? And the answer is yes, because there are no deadweight losses and you are charging a lower price than P1. Right? Will it make the firm happy? And the answer is they won't be unhappy. And this is where I go back to what Tuba said. Okay, price is actually more than ATC. So you are making some kind of a profit. Make sense? So there is some kind of a profit we are making. So firm will also be happy because price is greater than ATC, right? So, although they're not maximizing profit, but they're at least making supernormal profit, but not maximum profit. So if I charge a price like this one as a firm, I may end up making many stakeholders satisfied, and therefore this is called also satisficing profit. A price close to marginal cost above ATC could be satisficing profit. Got it? So these are this is a discussion for alternative aims to profit maximization. Just to recap, guys, and I want you guys to prepare this really well for your exams, CIEs, because it does come a lot often. So a firm will always want to maximize profit, but sometimes it may not able to do so because A, you may not have information. B, you don't want to sort of make the regulator or new firms to get attracted to your market or affect your market. C, you may also don't want to do it because you might have alternative aims, and alternative aims could be you could be new in the market. You may want to maximize revenue. You may want to also maximize sales sometimes, so sales volume, or you may want to be allocatively efficient because you want government to be happy with your performance, or and consumers to be happy with your performance, and so on. Make sense? So that's the idea of uh, alternative aims to profit maximization. Good. Any questions, guys? Anything that we need to discuss before I end the class? Are we happy? Okay, awesome, guys. Thanks a lot. I'm going to end the class on this note, and I will see you guys on. So, I want to cover labor market as well, but Vasik, it all depends on how much syllabus we